Chapter 26, Real Stage. Chen Xiang nodded and said, "Understood, Sister Yao. Sister, when will you teach me those devil skills?" Bai Yao looked at him coldly out of the corner of her eye, and said, "You haven't even completely grasped Junior Sister Divine Exercise of 4 Symbols yet, so don't even think about learning the devil skills. You still have a long way to go." Chen Xiang was currently able to use only a portion of the Azure Dragon Divine Exercise and the Vermilion Bird Divine Exercise, while the White Tiger Divine Exercise and the Black Tortoise Divine Exercise were exceptionally difficult to practice, and also had some special requirements to practice them. Azure Dragon Claw and Azure Dragon Roar from the Azure Dragon Divine Exercise were relatively easy to learn, and Vermilion Bird Profound Fire and Vermilion Bird Firewing were also the same. Although the Divine Exercise of 4 Symbols consisted of many powerful martial techniques, they required a certain amount of strength to be able to start practicing them, otherwise Qigong deviation would occur. TLN, Qigong deviation is simply imbalance in qi. Late at night, hidden deep below the ground, inside a private room, a ping-ping sound was being transmitted intermittently. This was caused by Chen Xiang practicing his martial skills. Just looking at his bare chest, one could see incomparably strong muscles that turned to a shade of dark red due to the slightly surging out hot qi, while he was standing steadily in a horse stance and was hitting the iron wall not far away from him. At this time, hot qi waves were bursting out of his fists, combined with an invisible fist strength, and were striking the iron wall, due to which the land shook and trembled. Not bad. Within a day's time, you were able to grasp the Fire King Fist, which is a basic attack skill of the Vermilion Bird Divine Exercise. However, it gets more difficult as you advance. You can now rest up. Su Meiyao was also a little bored and tired as she had been sitting there watching as Chen Xiang practiced for the whole day. Chen Xiang looked at that mature and ample bosom of Su Meiyao, and with a smile said, "Sister Meiyao, I need to take a shower. Would you like to join?" Su Meiyao, with her gentle and enchanting voice, and eyes full of charm, said, "I have to call senior sister to join us. I fear you will not be honest at that time." Speaking of Bai Yao, Chen Xiang's complexion suddenly froze. "Forget about it." Su Meiyao, while laughing loudly, entered the invisible ring on Chen Xiang's finger. Inside the ring, there was a small room, where all the daily necessities were present. Inside the ring, the 2 girls' lives were also very relaxed. The next day, Chen Xiang woke up and spat out the dragon saliva present inside his mouth in a small bottle, but he did not immediately go out and pour it on some herbs. He was currently saving and leaving it for the future. Chen Xiang wanted to look for Chen Luzong to talk about alchemy, but did not expect that Chen Luzong had already departed to purchase the spirit herbs. Moreover, he also left behind spirit herbs required to refine dans. These were already matured spirit herbs. Chen Xiang was also very happy to use them for refining dans, which could also help increase his alchemical experience. 1 day, 2 days, after 3 days had passed, Chen Xiang finished all the spirit herbs left behind by Chen Luzong. Because most of these spirit herbs were of the low-grade mortal level, the dans refined were also of same level. At this time, the Chen family also had enough dans to cope for some time. These days, many of the Chen family juniors gathered around Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang would often go to martial arts field and exchange pointers with the Chen family youth, and would sometimes also give them advice, which was very helpful for them. "Xiang, can you attend the King City's martial art tournament and obtain the first place reward of the high-grade spirit level true elemental dan?" Chen Tian, who suddenly came to the martial arts field. Chen Xiang, after giving it some thought, said, "I want to go to other cities to purchase some spirit herbs. At that time, along the way, if it is convenient, I will participate." At this time, one of the Chen family children said, "Chen Xiang, please participate. If we go, it will definitely be hopeless. But I heard that in the King City's martial arts tournament many talented people will be participating. Some even have the strength at the 7th level of the mortal martial realm." One girl, while nodding, also said, "I also heard that many people who returned from martial arts sects will also be participating." Chen Xiang heard all the information, which can be summarized as such. King City's martial arts tournament was held once every 10 years. The participants must be below the age of 20, and it was conducted by the largest city of Southern Martial Empire, King City. The present area of King City was previously the location of 4 different cities, but as the cities developed, more and more people started to settle in. The 4 cities expanded and got well interconnected, which later resulted in them combining to form a single major city. That was King City. King City was also the royal capital of the Southern Martial Empire. The Yao family and the Imperial Palace were also situated there. Many of the formidable families of the Southern Martial Empire were also established there, which led to many experts gathering there. Chen Tianhu also nodded and said, King City's martial arts tournament also has one more purpose, which is to select some excellent practitioners to enter those martial arts sects. You should already know that the whole Southern Martial Empire is affiliated with those martial arts sects. Martial arts families were required to pay taxes each year as a tribute to the Imperial Palace, while the Southern Martial Empire offered them to martial arts sects. Obviously these martial arts sects were formidable enough to dominate all the major families of the whole kingdom. Do not think that these taxes are handed over in vain. You should know that these martial arts sects are necessary to maintain our safety. Otherwise this place will most likely encounter a group of demon beasts, demons or devils, and will be easily slaughtered. Chen Tianhu was looking up at the sky as he said in an imposing tone. All the Chen family juniors suddenly went into an uproar. Previously they thought that these big sects were some kind of legendary existences, but now that they came to know that these legendary sects maintain such close relations with the mortal world, they were surprised. The Southern Martial Empire could be considered to be very big with a population of some dozen hundred millions, but still there weren't many truly powerful martial practitioners, and as for alchemists, they were as rare as finding the feathers of a phoenix and horns of a unicorn. However, with such a huge population, there were bound to be some good martial practitioners, so these martial arts sects would sometimes come here to recruit such practitioners. The fastest and the most effective way to select them was to gather all of these formidable and strong youngsters in a place and make them fight, and the strongest from them all would attain the qualifications to enter these martial arts sects. TLN, feathers of phoenix and horns of unicorn. Chinese idiom meaning extremely rare. Chen Xiang arrived at the library with Chen Tianhu. Along the way Chen Xiang noticed that Chen Tianhu must have had something important to say, because Chen Tianhu's complexion had been very serious since earlier. Once they were inside the library, Chen Tianhu said, Xiang your granduncle Chen Luzong has already gone to King City. Our Chen family in the eyes of many people is considered to be a formidable martial arts aristocratic family, but we are still unable to enter the King City. We cannot be regarded as an unconditionally strong and prosperous family, so our Chen family's next target is King City. Chen Xiang also heard some information, such as the Yao family also had some relations with those martial arts sects, and also that the Yao family doesn't pay taxes to the Imperial Palace but rather directly offers them to these sects. The Zhu family is also migrating to King City now. Because of Zhu Xiangxian, the Zhu family was able to establish themselves due to their relations with a strong martial arts sect. But if we want to strive there and open a path for the Chen family, we can only rely on you and your granduncle. Chen Tianhu's hands were pressing on Chen Xiang's shoulder as he sincerely said. Chen Xiang, while frowning, asked, what do I need to do? Join a martial arts sect? Chen Tianhu shook his head and said, no, even if you are able to join a martial arts sect, the Chen family still will not be able to get the support of those big sects. Now the only way is to get our Chen family noticed by those big sects, and then make them look for us on their own initiative. The only way to do this is to show off your talent in alchemy. Chen Xiang's gaze turned fierce. A bright flash flickered in his eyes, and he was grinning with a smile as he said, I know what to do. I will pick some things up and then go to King City and meet up with granduncle. Chen Tianhu patted Chen Xiang's shoulder, and with a smile on his face, said, Xiang your stage is not here in this mortal world, but rather at those martial arts sects where strong practitioners are as numerous as trees in a forest. Chapter 27, Killer. After packing up some simple things and slightly changing his appearance, Chen Xiang started his solitary journey towards King City with the strength. As long as his opponent was not someone above the 8th level of the mortal martial realm, it was difficult for them to pose any threat to him. In the whole Southern Martial Empire there were not many who had reached the 8th level of the mortal martial realm, so Chen Tianhu was assured about his safety. The distance from Wu City to King City was relatively far, and one needed to travel at least 5 or 6 days to reach their destination. Along the way there was no noticeable danger, unless one was seeking death and tried to enter the mountain forest where demon beasts frequently roamed. Brat, currently you do not need to rush to enter those martial arts sects. The competition inside those sects are very intense. If you do not have absolute strength, you will only further humiliate yourself. Bai Yao said. Understood, Sister Yao. Chen Xiang felt slightly warm in his heart as it was rare for this ice-cold beauty to care about him. At this time Chen Xiang was already very far away from Wu City and had already arrived in the wilderness. This was the first time he'd been so far away from Wu City. His heart was somewhat excited but also vigilant. In the evening as the whole sky turned dark, Chen Xiang stopped at a nearby forest. While walking on the dirt road, Chen Xiang suddenly noticed some movements behind him. Damn, this father is already being followed. Moreover, there are several of them. Chen Xiang cursed in his mind while increasing his guard. He operated his true ki and gathered it at his feet so that he could quickly dodge or attack at any time. Do not panic, let them come out. If you cannot defeat them then just flee. With the help of the vermilion bird Firewing you can easily escape. Su Meiyao transmitted to Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang replied with the help of his divine sense, I'm not panicking, I'm just in a bad mood. Have they been stalking me for a long time? Have they been following me from Wu City? Really useless. You were being followed since the beginning. Bai Yao said with contempt, which elevated the bad mood of Chen Xiang more. Chen Xiang turned around and in a cold voice said, how long are you going to follow me? All of you, get your fucking asses out here. Just shortly after he shouted, shua shua shua. 5 masked black-robed men appeared in front of him. He remembered that not long ago he had helped the Zhu family children cope with some black-robed killers, but he had not expected that he would also encounter them. These 5 black-robed men really had been following Chen Xiang from Wu City. It's just that Chen Xiang had been very vigilant since the beginning, which made it harder for them to sneak attack him. Now that they had been discovered by Chen Xiang, their only choice was to come out and fight. Only the eyes of the black-robed men were visible. The expressions in their eyes were very dull. One could clearly see that they were certainly experienced in this line of business. As soon as they appeared, each one took out a 2-edged pitch-black broadsword from their storage pouch. As they poured the true ki, they raised their swords and at the same time leapt towards Chen Xiang. The 5 killers' actions were although simple but at the same time were also quick and ruthless. In the moment they leaped, 2 flames flickered in Chen Xiang's eyes. Hot ki soared from his whole body. As vermilion bird true ki suddenly poured into his arms, his right hand burst out with a fiery aura and a long fire whip congealed from vermilion bird true ki appeared in his hand. It quickly swooped towards those 5 black-robed men. As it brushed past the 5 of them, their robes were instantly ignited. The 5 black-robed men had to give up attacking Chen Xiang and retreated to one side. The flames compared to before were much more formidable now. They were not able to withstand the flames and some even had to discard their burning robes. Chen Xiang exposed a sneer on his face. The fire whip in his hands mercilessly whipped towards a black-robed man's head. An explosion followed just after the fire whip struck the black-robed man, which was then followed by a burst of fire aura which instantly incinerated the black-robed man into ash. The vermilion bird flames were no ordinary flames, they were cultivated from the divine exercise and was thus unmatched in power. These 5 black-robed men's strengths were merely at the 5th level of the mortal martial realm, and with only this much strength, trying to assassinate Chen Xiang was just wishful thinking. Chen Xiang again started waving the fire whip. In the blink of an eye he had already whipped 3 black-robed men and killed them. These black-robed men in front of the fire whip were like butter being in front of a hot knife. Their bodies were easily cut down in half with just a sweep of the fire whip. Only with the help of a powerful divine sense was it possible to congeal true ki into a strong weapon. Sister Yao, do you have a way to make this guy talk? Chen Xiang caught the remaining black-robed man, but he refused to say anything. Bai Yao coldly smiled, you asked the right person. Just follow my instructions. First, with one hand hold down his head, then congeal out your divine sense. Operate your divine sense exactly as I tell you. First divide your divine sense in 6 parts and then pour it into his head from these 6 different locations. Chen Xiang complied immediately. His method was easy to understand and its results were also very quick. The black-robed man's eyes became noticeably sluggish and lost its luster. He also did not make any effort to struggle like before. You can now ask him. Bai Yao said. Chen Xiang praised this mysterious odd skill of Bai Yao, then to the black-robed man asked, who sent you to kill me? Yao family 7th elder. The voice of the black-robed man was stiff and was without any trace of emotion. A trace of ruthlessness flashed in the eyes of Chen Xiang. He had not thought it would turn out to be the Yao family who sent them. He continued and asked, where is he now? On his way to King City. That black-robed man replied. Chen Xiang lifted up the black-robed man by his robes and asked, did you also try to assassinate those family juniors? Yes. The black-robed man replied. Chen Xiang's countenance was solemn as well as surprised. This matter turned out to be related to the Yao family. Why would the Yao family try to assassinate those families' children attending the banquet? Chen Xiang once again asked. I do not know. Black Robe Man replied. Chen Xiang asked a few other questions. When he could not get anything out of the black-robed man, he killed him and incinerated his body. The sky was completely dark. Various stars were shining in the sky and suddenly a vibrant red light soared across the sky. It looked similar to an ordinary meteor, but a meteor does not travel horizontally. That light was Chen Xiang. After releasing his vermilion bird fire wing, he immediately rushed through the night to chase the Yao family's seventh elder. It was exactly the Yao elder who was previously wounded by him. Releasing true ki, he transformed it into wings. Not only did he consume a large amount of its divine sense, but he also simultaneously consumed a lot of true ki. But since Chen Xiang practiced the 5 elements true ki, only the fire attributed vermilion bird true ki was consumed, while the azure dragon true ki within his body was in surplus. It should be known that martial skills capable of transforming true ki into wings were not many. This type of martial skills were extremely rigorous because true ki needed to be emitted from the back, which required an accurate control of divine sense to transform it into wings. This would make them look similar to the wings of a bird. The slightest mistake and the user would fall down, which was very dangerous. These kind of martial skills were regarded as treasures by the martial artists. Chen Xiang learned from Ba Yao and Su Meiya that even in those martial arts sects, such skills were extremely rare. So at the time of casting this skill, Chen Xiang was especially careful, as he wanted to catch up with Yao family elder convoy without delay. If others could try to kill him, why could he not do the same? Chapter 28, King City. Chen Xiang would absolutely not leave anyone alive after they tried to kill him. Moreover, he could not pass on such a good opportunity to weaken the Yao family. That's right. On the road of martial arts, one should kill decisively. Otherwise, if grievances are accumulated in the heart, it will easily lead to Kaigong deviation. By any means, you should catch up to that fellow and beat him. Bai Yao's words were filled with slaughter ki. Chen Xiang was still flying. This allowed him to feel wonderful in every way. Since childhood, he had always wanted the ability to fly, and now he had it. This was all thanks to the 2 peerless beauties inside his ring. Sister Yao, how did you become Sister Meiyao's senior sister? It's difficult to imagine what kind of person your master is. Chen Xiang sighed from the bottom of his heart. If the apprentices were already this formidable, then just how powerful was their teacher? TLN, senior sister as in senior sister apprentice. Our teacher did not have a name. Regarding his origins, even we are not clear. Perhaps when you advance to that stage you might even be able to meet him. Bai Yao said. Chen Xiang was very curious about these 2 enigmatic girls, but at the same time, he was also very helpless since they were reluctant to disclose the information he wanted to know. Chen Xiang flew the entire night. Furthermore, he chose to fly on the outskirts of the wilderness. After the 3rd night, he could see a carriage in the distance which was slowly moving forward on an avenue. This avenue led to King City since those types of roads were only built near King City. Chen Xiang stared at that avenue in the distance. He was vaguely able to see large houses and the King City which was not too far away from him. Once the Yao family members set foot in King City, Chen Xiang would not have the opportunity to enact his revenge. That carriage had 2 coachmen and 2 horse-riding bodyguards. The strongest among them was the Yao family elder, and after him was Yao Tianhua. However, both had been wounded by Chen Xiang, and the strongest out of the 2 coachmen and the bodyguards were only at the 5th level of the mortal martial realm. When they came to Wu's city, there had been many people with them, but now only 1 carriage is left. Chen Xiang muttered as he flew to the front. They should have been hiding killers in the caravan. They must have first sent some people back to the Yao family as messengers, and some of them should have remained in Wu's city to guard the spirit den hall. As such, only these people are left. Chen Xiang guessed. He stopped at the edge of the avenue which was situated near a forest. After resting for a little bit, he put on a black robe and hood. After all, he was going to kill important members of the Yao family. If they came to know the identity of the killer, a war would break out between the Yao and the Chen families. Although the night was dark, a gentle silver-white moonlight shone upon the land. This gentle pale aura allowed people not to be engulfed in utter darkness. Chen Xiang, who was hiding on a tree near the roadside, held his breath and waited for the carriage to arrive. The sound of the carriage was accompanied by the insects chirping at night. Chen Xiang's heart was as calm and tranquil as water, but on the contrary, his eyes shone with killing intent. staring at the avenue under the tree. It had arrived just as the carriage was passing by. Chen Xiang's body sprung like a silent arrow that was released from a bow. At the same time, he congealed out a golden long whip in his hand. Slaughter ki was emitted by the long whip, accompanied by a violent aura. The whip was congealed from the metal attributed true ki. His metal attribute corresponded to the white tiger. The white tiger divine exercise signified slaughter and ruthlessness. To further its progress, one should indulge in endless killing and comprehend the way of slaughtering. While Chen Xiang leapt towards the carriage, he ruthlessly swung the whip downwards, striking right at the middle of the carriage. With a weapon similar to a two-edged long knife chopping down, the luxurious carriage was splitted into two with a crackling sound. Two people simultaneously jumped out. One of them was the Yao family elder, and the other was Yao Tianhua. Which gang of bandits do you belong to? We are the Yao families. The Yao family elder had not even finished with his sentence before Chen Xiang swung his whip like lightning 4 more times, hitting the 2 coachmen and the 2 bodyguards as they were just about to draw their blades and jump off their horses. The long golden whip, which contained valiant metal attributed true ki accompanied by slaughter ki, simultaneously struck their upper body. Similar to striking tofu, the 4 people became separate pieces of flesh and blood. This type of brutal true ki had not only made the Yao family elder and Yao Tianhua panic-stricken, even Chen Xiang could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. You are Chen Xing. When the Yao family elder saw Chen Xiang, he suddenly shouted. However, Chen Xiang's whip had already ruthlessly struck down on his body. The Yao family elder was worthy of being a 7th level of mortal martial realm martial artist. Although he was seriously injured, he was still able to gather true ki in his body and catch the whip laden with white tiger slaughtering true ki. You really are Chen Xiang, the Yao family elder said in a high-pitched voice. The expression in his eyes could not conceal his fear. He had not thought Chen Xiang would actually dare to come and try to kill them so brutally. Chen Xiang remained silent. In his left hand, fire ore flashed while another fire whip was also congealed, and then he opened his mouth and roared, using wood attribute true ki. The azure dragon roar wreaked havoc on the Yao family elder. At this time, Chen Xiang's vermilion bird true ki whiplashed accurately above the Yao family elder's neck, breaking his head into pieces. Nearby, Yao Tianhua was already frightened by Chen Xiang. Not only could he cast the purest alchemy flame, but he could also use the metal attribute slaughtering true ki, and at the same time, he could even release wood attribute true ki. This was displaying 3 types of attributes at the same time. To Yao Tianhua's knowledge, this sort of feat had never been heard of. Chen Xiang moved towards Yao Tianhua, his eyes flashing with killing intent. He swung the golden long whip in his hand and it lashed towards Yao Tianhua's neck, and in that instant, Yao Tianhua emitted a panic-stricken cry as his eyes were filled with horror. As the long whip struck his neck, his head immediately fell down. With a frozen and frightened countenance, Yao Tianhua had died filled with both disbelief and resentment. He had never expected that as the Yao family genius, his death would actually happen in such a way. Chen Xiang inhaled a mouthful of air and faintly said, originally, at the time when you tried to stab me with your sword, I already wanted to kill you. After killing the 2 of them, Chen Xiang removed their storage pouches. They contained some spare coins and herbs. It still could be considered as a substantial income. In order to not leave any traces, Chen Xiang tidied up the scene with great difficulty. If one was to arrive where the carriage had been, no one would be able to notice that a one-sided massacre had taken place here. Chen Xiang walked on the avenue towards the tall and prosperous city. King City was vast and was surrounded by thick walls. Chen Xiang looked at the endless wall and the moat outside of the city. Many people were going in and out of the enormous city gate, and many soldiers stood on the city wall and next to the gate. The lively streets were covered with smooth bricks and were full of pedestrians. Such a scene was clearly visible through the gate. Chen Xiang finally arrived inside of King City. He curiously looked around. Before, he had thought that Wu's city was quite big and lively, but now, he discovered that he was a frog in a well. He did not know just how vast King City was, but he knew that it was many times larger than Wu's city. Chapter 29, Dang Xiang Rival Manor. After entering the city, Chen Xiang saw many people were gathering in front of a very long wall. He went over and found that a lot of information was put up on that wall. They were either giving some directions or some kind of other informations. On top of everything, there was also a map of the entire city indicating some inns, well-known stores, imperial palace, and marital family addresses. The map itself was very detailed. Chen Xiang soon found where the Yao family was on the map. It was located not far away from the imperial palace. He also saw where the Zhu family was on the map. Currently, The Zhu family was still in the process of moving to King City. Another thing that had caught Chen Xiang's attention was that there was information regarding the buying and selling of items, looking for missing persons or items, and recruitment offers for various jobs. This was to help people who were new to King City. Chen Xiang swept through the myriad of information. To his surprise, a recruitment poster was posted by his granduncle, recruiting alchemist. Location is posted by Chen Luzong. Chen Xiang remembered the location posted and then looked at the map to find it. Granduncle moves really fast. He just arrived at King City and has already found a good store. Chen Xiang could see from the map that the location of the store was quite good. It was situated at the corner of a crossroad and moreover it was a 3-story building. After memorizing the route, Chen Xiang left immediately. He soon arrived at his destination, but the store was closed and its doors were heavily damaged. There were many slashes with other markings on it. Chen Xiang tightly frowned and knocked on the door. "Who?" A very angry voice came from inside. "Granduncle, it's me," Chen Xiang replied in a low voice. At this point he had already guessed the crux of the matter. As the door opened, Chen Xiang saw Chen Luzong's old face filled with anger. At this time, Chen Xiang clearly saw that the inside of the shop was actually a mess. Broken chairs, and walls cluttered with blade slashes. After seeing all of this, Chen Xiang suddenly clenched his fists as they made brittle sounds. His eyes were filled with anger. "Who did this?" Chen Xiang gloomily asked. He swore in his heart that he would make that person pay 10 times for what they had done. "Come inside, then we will talk," said Chen Luzong. After Chen Xiang went inside, they went to 3rd floor. On the way up, he could see the extent of the damage done. The walls, floors and roof were all heavily damaged. It was needless to mention the chairs and tables. The more Chen Xiang looked, the more furious he got, but his facial expression was still tranquil. This made Chen Luzong slightly surprised. On the 3rd floor, Chen Xiang and Chen Luzong were sitting on the floor. "The backyard is still good. I had invited 2 assistants to the shop but they have been injured. I just went to deliver some dans and spirit coins to them." Chen Luzong sighed. "This store was bought by me a long time ago. However, when I went out this morning some people rushed and then it became like this. Who did it? I will immediately make them pay." Chen Xiang was filled with killing intent. He had already killed the Yao family elder and genius. Who wouldn't he dare to kill? "I also want to go and teach a lesson to that fellow. But they're one of the shopkeepers of the alchemy force. If we offend them, later on it will be difficult for us to sell dans," Chen Xiang said in a cold voice. "Granduncle, you don't need to worry. Our Chen family has just entered King City. If we are bullied in front of our gate and yet yield to them, then in the future how will our Chen family be able to settle here? I also understand this. However, the alchemy forces behind the shopkeeper wants to obtain this store, but I refused. Just after I posted the recruitment notice, he made his move. He wants to make me to retreat in the face of these difficulties." Chen Xiang, while curling his lips, said, "Granduncle, you are an alchemist and surprisingly you are being oppressed by a mere shopkeeper." Chen Luzong smilingly said, "I'm taking into consideration of the overall situation. Our Chen family has already offended the Yao family. In King City beside the Yao family there was one more alchemy force and that was the Dangxiang Rival Manor. In King City and several other cities they had many branch stores. Moreover, they had always kept a low profile, but now they had actually made such a move." TLN, Dangxiang equals pill aroma or fragrance. Dangxiang Rival Manor. I'll go and find that shopkeeper. Which one of the 5 Dangxiang Rival Manors inside the King City does he have a shop? Chen Xiang stood up while brushing the dust off his bottom. From his facial expression, anyone could clearly guess that he was not planning to give up. Chen Luzong knew that today there was no other method to deal with the situation. He was also aware of his nephew's strength and arrogance. South Side, remember not to murder anyone. In King City murdering anyone is not a good fruit to eat. I will also go with you. TLN does not have a good result. Chen Xiang nodded his head, then with Chen Luzong left the store. "Granduncle, what is your current level?" While being with Chen Luzong, Chen Xiang could only sense fire ki and was unable to sense vigorous levels of true ki from Chen Luzong. Hey, I'm not a vegetarian, but my strength still cannot be compared to your grandfather." Chen Luzong only gave a vague answer to Chen Xiang. "Little guy, King City has people that can be described as crouching tigers and hidden dragons, so I dare not to arbitrarily act." TLN equals hidden experts. Chen Xiang nodded and said, "I understand. Listening to what Granduncle has said, you should be very formidable. Unexpectedly you are still willing to admit defeat." Chen Luzong while smiling said, "Later on, you will know sometimes it is even harder to eat a shriveled fruit. As of now no one knows the exact strength of this poor old guy. If someone provokes me, hey hey. Chen Luzong's laugh was extremely sinister. Even Chen Xiang could not help but shiver. If you use your strength, you could give your enemy a very nasty surprise. This was actually a very sinister move. Soon, Chen Xiang and Chen Luzong came inside a manor surrounded by high walls. This was the southern Dangxiang rival manor. They entered a large two-story building. Inside they came to a place where dans were primarily sold. Brat, do not take things too far, Chen Luzong said complainingly. Chen Xiang nodded his head and then shouted, shopkeeper, quickly roll out. Chen Xiang poured vigorous true qi into his voice, turning it into a roar. The whole building shook slightly due to the roar. Everyone present inside was shocked. It was a surprise to them that someone came here to cause trouble. Moreover, it was just a teenager. The Dangxiang rival manor's business was generally good, but due to Chen Xiang's roar, everyone immediately went out and started watching the situation. Chen Xiang's roar disturbed all of the Dangxiang rival manor's personnel. A ton of bodyguards immediately rushed to the scene and surrounded Chen Xiang. These bodyguards were only at the 4th or 5th level of the mortal martial realm. Chen Xiang could judge their strength from the slight true qi emanating from their body. There were not many like Chen Xiang, who was already at the 6th level of the mortal martial realm strength at a relatively younger age. Therefore, Chen Xiang, compared to these bodyguards, was relatively strong. Chen Xiang looked around. There wasn't any trace of Chen Luzong. Just a moment ago, Chen Luzong blended into the crowd and had already arrived outside. It seemed that Chen Luzong did not wish to make an appearance in this matter. Do you even know what this place is? You dare to rush here and make trouble. Chapter 30. Teach a lesson. Although Chen Xiang's appearance was pretty simple, he looked like a teen who had just left his mother's embrace. But just from his roar alone, it was evidently clear to the bodyguards how powerful Chen Xiang was, so they did not dare to move against him. You are the shopkeeper here? After hearing his words, all the bodyguards and the people watching from outside burst into laughter. You don't even know the shopkeeper and still came here to make trouble? One bodyguard said while laughing. You have not heard about shopkeeper Hua, right? You should have heard of the city's third young master. Our shopkeeper Hua is Governor Hua's third child. You are just seeking death by trying to provoke shopkeeper Hua. Another bodyguard said as he sneered. TLN, Governor here is City Lord. After the Hufu-wearing man heard people mention his name, his face could not help but reveal a sliver of pride. He nodded and said, I'm the shopkeeper of this place. Who is in? Why have you come? TLN, Hufu is a Chinese noble dress. Pooh. TLN, spitting in contempt. Chen Xiang laughingly said, I don't give a shit. If you really had some skill, you would not even be here to be a shopkeeper by your father's arrangement. When you came here to be a shopkeeper, in your father's eyes, you were already deemed hopeless. This remark startled everyone. They did not expect Chen Xiang would dare to say something like this face to face. Hu Zin's complexion turned extremely ugly. Chen Xiang's statement wasn't far from the truth. As the son of one of the prominent figures capable of influencing one region, coming to this place and taking care of business really was nothing to be proud of. Only the status was somewhat noble. I'll ask you again, was our store smashed by you and your people? Chen Xiang's complexion became incomparably cold. So what? One bodyguard with face full of anger said, right. Shopkeeper who took us there. Hu Zin's face muscles started to twitch. Turns out that you are here for revenge. Indeed, it was I who brought people to that store. The crowd of bodyguards behind Hu Zin started to shout out about how they damaged the store. Chen Xiang coldly said, you are only a pack of dogs. If desired, your master will not even hesitate to sell you lackeys as slaves. What are you so happy about? Glad to have found a good master? Mongrel, you seek death. One bodyguard angrily cursed and already started to rush towards him. Meanwhile, in Chen Xiang's hand, threatening hot flames suddenly appeared. A paw sound reverberated, and immediately after that, painful screams were heard. Chen Xiang, with his true qi, congealed out a long whip and struck the face of the bodyguard, which then made the bodyguard fly away. A charred black mark was left on the face of the bodyguard. Seeing this, the group of bodyguards, although they were shocked, still rushed at him. After all, there were many of them while the opponent was only one. Chen Xiang said in a cold voice, since you have already admitted to doing it, I have decided not to forgive you. Suddenly, a scorching hot qi burst out from Chen Xiang's body before he fiercely started to wave the fire whip in his hand. He lashed continuously with a speed so fast that others' eyes could not even get a glimpse of it. It even produced numerous after images. For everyone, it was similar to Chen Xiang holding multiple whips and lashing at them. Limitless fire whips, that were like innumerable salamanders, overwhelmingly lashed towards the group of bodyguards. Hu Zin and his bunch couldn't even dodge. Just in the blink of an eye, they were whipped innumerable times with the fire whip. The fire whip continued to lash at them with madness, lashing them on nearly every part of their body. This had left numerous charred black marks on them, burning them down to their marrow, making them yell due to the intermittent pain. In just a few moments, each person had at least 3 whip marks releasing true ki outside the body, which created a form from it. One could clearly see that he was at the 6th level of mortal martial realm. Chen Xiang's true ki was terribly vigorous, like a scorching hot breath with an invisible powerful pressure. Chen Xiang's flames were cultivated out by the vermilion bird divine exercise. Vermilion bird was a revered beast, and any ordinary person in the face of such invisible almighty pressure would quiver in fear. Hu Xin himself knew he had kicked an iron wall and unexpectedly annoyed a 6th level of mortal martial realm martial artist. But he remembered that earlier, the store only had a poor old man of an unknown origin. Dang Xiang Rival Manor will not let you get away with this. Our Manor Lord is very powerful. Hu Xin, while grinding his teeth, spoke, but just as he finished speaking, a fire whip ruthlessly lashed on his mouth. At this point, Hu Xin had to admit that the martial artist in front of him was indeed very powerful. In just a short moment of time and a little effort, he hit them to the extent that they couldn't defend themselves anymore. Moreover, in their bodies, remnants of fire ki were still left. If they fail to expel them out quickly, it will have huge effects on their future cultivation. Tell your Manor Lord, if he wants revenge, despite everything that has happened, he can come and find me in the store. Chen Xiang dropped these words and left. Although there were some bodyguards still left unharmed outside, no one dared to stop him. After watching Chen Xiang leave, everyone present outside were slightly excited. They already started spreading rumors of what they saw. In the backyard of the store, Chen Luzong laughingly said, "Brat, you have not only offended the Dangxiang Rival Manor but also the King City Governor. If I was you, I would have already left." Chen Xiang spoke with a contemptuous look. "Granduncle, were you already aware that the shopkeeper was the King City's governor's son? You disappeared in the blink of an eye." Chen Luzong smiled and said, "My old bones are not like you youngsters. I can't afford to act crazily. Therefore, the following matter is for you to resolve. I'm only responsible for some leisure matters. That's all." Chen Xiang had been rushing for several days. This time, he was very tired, so he wanted to rest well. Soon, he would have to face Dangxiang Rival Manor's lord and the King City Governor. Chen Xiang had already made some plans to deal with them. That's why he dared to hit the governor's son. After all, in this world, the power of wealth was extremely powerful. Of course, the true strength was still a lot stronger compared to the power of wealth. Chen Xiang, that Dangxiang Rival Manor is very likely to be a branch division of one of the sects. Su Meiyao appeared from inside the ring and spoke to Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang, at this time, was soaking in a bathtub. Su Meiyao's sudden appearance shocked him. Before he spoke, "Sister Meiyao, why didn't you say so earlier?" Su Meiyao, while looking at Chen Xiang's exposed strong muscles, smiled charmingly. "Rest assured, Dangxiang Taiyuan is a friendly sect. Moreover, they make a clear distinction between right and wrong. I believe that the Manor Lord will not find you for trouble." Chen Xiang let out a loose yet deep breath and smilingly said, "Sister Meiyao, the water is still quite warm. Come bathe with me. I'm going to let senior sister accompany you." Although she's icy, she very much likes taking hot baths. Su Meiyao chuckled as she spoke. Chen Xiang coughed twice and asked, "Is Dangxiang Taiyuan the name of the sect?" Chen Xiang very much yearned to enter those big sects. Su Meiyao came next to the big tub and said, "Among the 8 major sects, Dangxiang Taiyuan's expertise regarding pills even makes other sects jealous. Then wouldn't it be great for me to enter Dangxiang Taiyuan? After all, it is an alchemy-related sect." Su Meiyao shook her head. "I don't recommend you doing that. As for alchemy, I can teach you. You should enter the extreme martial sect. When it comes to strength of the sect, it is at the pinnacle of all the 8 major sects. It's been founded for quite a number of years, and the first dean of the extreme martial sect is a legendary figure. To be able to enter those martial arts sects, Chen Xiang cultivated even more diligently, because he had to reach the 9th level of mortal martial realm before he could truly start his journey.